So Nick, how's that chamomile tea?
It's good. It's good. It's nice. It's warm. I'm not gonna get the PCP that coffee gives me. The runs to the bathroom afterwards.
Oh, so that's okay. Is that what PCP is?
PCP, post coffee poops. Yep. PCP is post coffee poops.
Well, I'm in my second cup in, so it's good.
Of coffee or tea?
Yeah. Tea, coffee. Well, this is a special episode simply because numbers are kind of important to me, not because I'm a numbers guy, but I believe in the power of numbers. So this is your episode 7, buddy.
Oh, I like 7.
Yeah.
It's my second favorite number. So that's
the number of completion. So, I've been wanting to have you come on board and talk with us for a while. So, Derek can't make it this morning, but we just have fun. So we just run with it. But we've known each other now for what, 2 years? 3 years?
Yeah, like actively talking outside of just my dad's connection with you, I would say probably 3 years on and off. More recently, talking more frequently.
Yeah. And then so I go back and forth with your dad about this all the time. I can't remember when I first met him. I think it was 2013 or 2014.
Yeah.
Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right. Where did y'all actually first meet at? Was it at the church?
Yeah, it was at the church.
At the church? Yeah.
Yeah. We and I can't remember if it was at a small group or if it was because I was on part of the prayer team. But I just remember at some point we just started getting more and more close. And then I remember when Jill and I were trying to figure out who was going to be in the wedding, like groomsmen and all that stuff. And I was like, I want Joe to be my groomsman. So to me, that is the wildest thing. Joe, your dad is like the closest friend I've had in such a short amount of time. And that he's your dad. So, I got nothing but good things to say about him.
I love my dad to death. He's a character, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But in a very, very good way.
Yes. Well, I mean, even if it was a bad way, he's still a character. But no, he's a great guy. I've talked to him at least once a week.
Yeah.
At least. At a minimum. But
I depending on when it is, me and Dad talk about anywhere from once a day usually. If we're both busy, every 2 days.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go past every 2 days. So I'm very thankful with that relationship I have with him.
Yeah.
So that's good that's good for both of us, I think. So
it is because me being a dad now, like I hope Evie, when she gets older, that she's talking to me like every day. I hope so. I want to talk to her every day. I don't care what it's about. I don't care if it's bad stuff, good stuff. Because now, being older, I realized that when I stopped talking with my dad, it was really because I didn't have as close of a relationship as I should have. But also, too, I just got to start getting busy with life and building my own life. So that's, and you can't get that time back once it goes, I don't think we've built that technology yet where we can just rewind and do it all over again.
If we do, it's too expensive for me.
Yeah, me too. Even then, I don't think I want to rewind there's the bad things, of course, but some things, it wouldn't make me who I am if it wasn't for the fact that I went through what I went through,
Yeah, that's what it makes you.
And I remember first hearing about you when you were still in college.
Yeah, I was. Which college? The South or UAB?
I think it was before you. I think it was. I was pretty sure it was after UAB.
After UAB?
Yeah.
So, UAB was a much better time for me in my life. South was fun, but I did not have I was not on my path yet. Let's just say that I was still trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. That was.
What were you?
What was that?
No, go ahead.
No, what was I considering? Like in terms of like a
back then?
Major. So back then, I started down a couple paths. So before I even started college, I actually toured at UAB at first because I thought I wanted to do biomedical engineering because I was super into robotic, like prosthetics, especially.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So I wanted to get very into that.
Yeah.
And then I realized I absolutely hated chemistry. I hated all that stuff. And I was going down a terrible path very, very quickly. Which looking back, we can kind of tie this in later, but I do wish I had kind of pushed myself on a lot of that stuff. But anyway, it led me down a path of, in high school, I was like, oh, well, I enjoy writing for the high school newspaper at Baker High School in Mobile. Let's start as a journalism major. And that lasted maybe 2 weeks. And then I was like, okay, let's pick something kind of realistic for me. So that's when I went down the just flat business route, kind of. I don't remember how they did it at South exactly. I don't know if I was technically a finance major at that point or if it was just like the underlying foundational courses of business, but I just essentially started down the business course because I was like, in my mind, for some reason at that age, I was like, it won't require a whole lot of math, even though I was going to be a finance major. So
it's not chemistry math. It's not chemistry math. Yeah.
It's not chemistry math, and it wasn't like computer science level math.
Right.
So those are the two things I was kind of like into before.
Yeah.
So I was like, this should be okay. And then I started going down that path, and I was like, this feels very forced. I hate my classes. There was some other stuff going on in my life in the background too. And it just got to a point where I literally dropped out of school. I quite literally dropped out of school. I had a night that was just a terrible, terrible night.
Yeah.
I stayed up until 5 o'clock in the morning. Right. I drove down the causeway and I called my mom crying in like a parking lot somewhere after being up for 24 hours. And I was like, I don't want to be a failure, but I want to come home, And of course, she felt that being a mother. She was instantly like, okay, we'll do whatever we have to do. So
right.
A lot of people who know me now would never know that I actually dropped out of college at one point.
Wow. Well, that's that's interesting that you're talking about your college path the way it was. So my path to college was really interesting because I had a couple scholarship offers, had a lot of different choices as far as in-state and out-of-state, and actually had a couple scholarships for those. But here at the 0 hour, I decided after doing a college campus tour that I wanted to go to Hampton-Sydney College in Virginia.
Wow.
Yeah, okay. All-male school, surrounded by like 4 all-women's colleges and a co-ed university like 10, 15 minutes away. But yeah, I wanted to do that instead. So my freshman year, freshman year, I get in. And my major that I'm studying is what my dad was doing, which is computers, so information systems. So I went to take a C++ class, got into the class. I'm pretty sure I passed it, but then I was like, I can't. Information systems, if this is what it's going to be like, I don't think I can do this. This isn't for me. And so when I transferred out of Hampton-Sydney to Auburn for my sophomore year, my goal was to finish in 4 years. Whatever it took, I was going to finish. So I transferred to Auburn and I took, what did they call it back then? Business administration, which I had no idea what that was. So some people said, what's that? What is that? I'm like, I don't know. I just want to graduate. So it turns out it's management. So I was taking all these different classes, barely graduated at Auburn. I remember my parents asking me the week of graduation, was like, you're sure you're graduating? It's like, yeah, I'm sure. I'm graduating. I'm sure. There's one class. If I had made, I think I made like a D or a C, whatever it was. If I made anything below that, I wasn't going to graduate. Yeah. I had like a 2.5, 2 point something or other. And in high school, I graduated like 4. The math, the numbers it doesn't matter now. That's when I'm helping people build resumes. I'm like, it's good that you completed your college and your college education, but unless they really, really base everything on that, you don't worry about that.
I don't put my GPA, even when I graduated, I did not put my GPA on my resume, only because of the fact that I still to this day, it like still irks me a little bit. I finished UAB and graduated with a 3.49.
Ooh.
So I was 0.01.
You went that point
with some honors.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I quite literally never put my GPA on my resume.
Yeah.
Because of that alone.
Yeah.
Even though my GPA was absolutely fine. Compared to some of the people around me, I was absolutely fine. Because of that 0.01, I refused. I was embarrassed.
Do you think there's any value in putting a GPA on a resume now that you've kind of been,
No. Crazy enough, I'm about to be hiring my first person at 20. How old am I even? Almost 25, 24.
That's
I'm going to be
awesome.
hiring soon.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, we can go into that because I don't think me and you have even talked about that.
No.
I think I would like look at it, but I wouldn't put any weight behind it.
Right. Because all it is a measurement of it. Like, I understand what it's for. It's for to measure your aptitude in something, but the fact that the tests themselves, I mean, really, like if I were to take a test now, I'd do it because I want to show that I understand the material, that I comprehend the material. But the way you go back and you test it, I mean, really at the end of the day, it's memorization. Depending upon what course you are. Now, there are probably courses that are truly based on like you wanting to be able to test whether or not you have the capability to comprehend and show that you know the material, and that's good. But at the end of the day, it's like college tests are really just memorization from what I remember and being able to recall what you memorized.
Yeah, and that's why what you're talking about there is it's a lot of memorization. What I prefer to see is something along the lines. This is kind of what I did for myself. Is instead of putting down a number, a GPA, to show, like you said, show a evaluation of your mastery of a subject, which is essentially just memorization. And honestly, I've forgotten most of what I did in college in terms of like tests I took, but the things that I didn't forget are the things that I put on my resume, which were my projects. I think it is so much more important, especially, I mean, it depends on your major, right? Like we were IS majors, you know, and, you know, CS majors and whatnot, they're going to have much better portfolio of projects, especially like technical stuff. But I think any type of experience in terms of like projects or, you know, group assignments that you worked on, if you could describe those on a resume, I feel like that's infinitely more useful to somebody than just a number.
Well, that's true too, because at the end of the day, when you get hired on in a workplace, you become a piece inside the machine. So ultimately, unless they tell you, you know, we don't want nor need you interacting with anybody. We just need you to crunch in numbers, like simple data entry stuff. But most of the time, you're going to be interacting with other people. So being able to describe what you're able and capable of on projects, well, that's collaboration, that's integration. You know, those are very important things, because at the end of the day, it's all about completing the project and the process. So, you know, sometimes it doesn't require any interaction at all, but I would say probably 80% of the time there's going to be cross interaction. Yeah. I mean, so you got to be able to be around people, even if you don't want to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I was one of those people growing up. I wouldn't say like addicted to video games. I was a person who, I think this could be a rabbit hole, but I'll try not to go too far. I think that people kind of associate addiction to video games is just a lot of people who have bad times in their life attach themselves to things. And as escapism, I think video game was an escapism for me.
Right. Yeah.
Unfortunately, because of that escapism, I didn't feel like I could socialize with people as well.
Right.
That was really a skill throughout college that I became aware of that I needed to improve. And I just went out of my way, out of my comfort zone to start learning how to socialize with people. Because crazy enough, I mean, when you spend the majority of your, middle school and high school in your room, I mean, you're talking to people online and stuff, it's friends, but you're not like interacting with people that you're not talking to every day, if that makes sense. Like you're not used to that socialization. So that was a huge barrier for me.
Well, see, for me, growing up, like high school is when I remember AOL.com and online chats and AOL Instant Messenger and communicating that way. But the e-gaming side of it, I've got a coworker who has kind of educated me on how much of a billion-dollar industry it is, depending upon what type of games you're playing. And I'm like, good Lord, they make that kind of money? It's like, yeah. I'm like, well, I mean, if she wants to go down that rabbit hole and if she's happy, I mean, she can. And we'll just have to help her disconnect from it from time to time. But I didn't realize that, what type of games did you like to play?
So I was into like FPS game, like shooting games.
Okay, Call of Duty.
Like MMOs, stuff like that growing up. Like, of course, like every other person in like the 2000s that had a computer, I played World of Warcraft. Like I got addicted to WoW, like every other nerd did. So it was one of those things. But funny enough, on the esports side, one of my best friends is a esports pro.
Wow,
that is what he does.
That is cool.
He lives in Tampa, Florida now. He used to live in Birmingham. He's lived all over the place. His parents are South African and German. So he has a dual citizenship, I think with South Africa.
Cool.
But he went to school at NC State for finance. And got a job at, is it Fifth Third Bank? One that's big in Florida. So he got a job at Fifth Third Bank. And then he, he'd obviously always been competitive, but he kind of at the more amateur level, and he was doing it, on the side of work.
Nice.
It got to the point where there's this game he plays a game called Apex Legends, which is a battle royale game. And he quite literally got to a point where, he found a squad of 3 people and they were placing, top 10, top 5.
Nice. What's his name?
His name is Cole Prommel, but like his in-game name is RKN.
Okay. RKN. Quick shout out to Cole, old Cole. Is C Cole or K Cole?
He is C Cole.
C Cole. All right, right on.
I have two best friends named Cole, and the C Cole is the one who he had a job lined up at Chase Bank, and decided to go the esports route for now, and he's doing pretty well. He's definitely not in the he's playing at the top level. Don't get me wrong. Their team is like consistently top 10. He plays for a team called Torrent. Torrent is a subdivision of Wisdom Media. And Wisdom Media actually just got their offices built inside of Mall of America in Minneapolis. So
see, again, this stuff's so amazing. This is fascinating to me. I'm like,
yeah,
he's doing it. That's right on. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean the tournament. They frequently play in tournaments where the overall prize pool. I think it's the main tournament circuit for Apex is called ALGS. And I think like the overall big tournament prize pool is upwards of like 5-10 million.
Wow, that's crazy. That's insane.
Yeah. So.
He Chase introduced me to this YouTube video, and it talked about the different types of like what is it? Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike's a big game, isn't it?
Yep. I played Counter-Strike as well growing up. That's actually that me and him
a lot of people got professional enough to like make money off of that type of stuff, and I'm just like, that's just crazy stuff to me.
And that's Counter-Strike was especially in the early 2000s. It was massive in like Sweden and Finland, and they were already having tournaments back then with prize pools that were, I mean, in the tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Wow. Even for just those regions. And then of course, like not necessarily with Counter-Strike, but South Korea has been. South Korea has essentially had a form of esport since 2001 or something. So it's a crazy industry. It's absolutely booming.
I don't think it's going to slow down.
I don't think it's going to slow down. I do think I think it'll morph into something
Especially
else
with augmented reality is going to be a factor.
And it's kind of, you look forward and it's like, when it comes to augmented reality, or is it going to be less about like hand-eye coordination like it is currently, and strategy, and it's going to be more about like actual like physical athletics, kind of like how it is with, most physical sports you play.
Yeah.
When people think of a sport. I'm curious what route it's going to go down. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with the way the pandemic happened back in 2020, I mean, you would think that probably esports showed a huge boom, because nobody could get out. So what are they going to do? They're going to retreat to the computers. And, I don't know the numbers, but that you saw, as far as businesses go, a lot of businesses, when the pandemic hit, they looked at their business models, at least some of the smarter businesses, and they said, hey, we really don't need this as much. We can do more of this. And, there was a lot more remote. And I'm not sure if that's still the case now, as remote still as prevalent, but I don't see why it wouldn't be, because you don't have to pay the expense of real estate, the insurance and all that stuff. But the cost is truly on the person that's working remotely. So for me, I would probably, if I were ever have a business, I would try to make it as remote as possible within what's best for the health of the employees, of course. Some people they want that social interaction, and that's completely fine. But, there's ways to run a business now that you don't have to have that brick and mortar.
No.
So that's the way the world is going to end up going, I think, eventually.
Oh, I absolutely think so. And I think, I went from Protective Life before I worked where I work currently now. But at Protective, obviously, they have a huge campus in Birmingham. I mean, they have thousands of employees.
Right.
They have an on-site gym, on-site cafeteria. I mean, they've got the works over there. So I've seen them definitely push hard for going back to work, obviously, because it's a huge draw to work at Protective. That's why I wanted to work there initially. Yeah. And then on the flip side, you have my company, who even before COVID, the operational team was kind of focused in Birmingham. But they had like satellite offices.
Right.
But what is it? 50 or 60% of our employees are the sales force. And the salespeople all work across the U.S. And have kind of always been remote. And a lot of the teams are remote. I mean, even prior to COVID, my current boss has lived in Ohio.
Really?
Yeah, even before I was necessarily on her team.
Really?
So in May, I think they set the date for like May 20 something is the official putting
return to office.
Return to office. Yeah, like our parent company Advisor Group is like, we're going to kind of get together or do the return to office thing, and they're talking about unity and whatnot as their message, which is, I think that's a fair way to go about it. But they did say in the message of return to office, we understand that it's a changed landscape at this point, and that there are a lot of people who work remote who are never going to come back to the office, and that is completely fine. Just talk with HR, talk with your manager, let them know, and officially be a remote employee, and that's fine.
And again, there are people that are responsible enough that can handle working from home. I mean, the whole work from home environment existed way before COVID. I mean, I remember there was this cartoon, like a newspaper cartoon about this parent who works from home. That's what he does. And he told about his life of working from home. And I can't remember the name of the cartoon, but I mean, it's been ever since the onset of the internet. I mean, it opened up a whole new landscape for people to be able to make money. It's for the people that didn't quite, there was a newspaper article years ago that said that the internet would be dead by 10, 20 years. Obviously, that did not happen.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
But the internet, for all its criticisms that people may have, it is a huge blessing for people because they have the ability to make money, whether it's through drop shipping or eBay selling or creating their own online website or being able to take their existing business model, pivot it out, use the internet and reach a whole new audience. I mean, streaming, there's, this is probably one of the most prosperous generations that anybody could be born into. And if you live in a country like our country, I mean, you can make it. You can definitely make something for yourself. You just got to be willing to do it. And even in countries like, let's say, I read an article the other day from Cointelegraph, where even in the Ukraine, if it wasn't for the internet, with everything going on there, people would not have a way to take care of themselves, to travel, get food or whatnot. Yep. But because of Bitcoin and the other cryptocurrencies, people are finding ways to still get what they need to get, even though all the banks are shut down over there. I had to go back and check to see how authentic that article I read was, but that just shows the power of the internet and the power of like future technologies in general.
Yeah. And on the flip side, one of the things, obviously, like essentially universally, the internet is a good thing. Mm-hmm. One of the flip sides, especially of the remote working though, that I've seen, which has kind of made me, sad. It's sad to see that change, is the landscape of downtowns, like of downtown cities. Yeah. You have tenant spaces that are 20% populated as compared to what they used to be. And you have these local businesses that essentially thrived off that like lunch hour rush.
That lunch hour rush.
Are just, it's not a thing anymore. So will it be a thing? Maybe. I guess it's going to depend on the city and the industries that they deal with. Unfortunately for Birmingham, in a lot of ways, though, I would say tech space has been huge in Birmingham, and startups. If people didn't know, startup community in Birmingham is huge. I mean, literally the biggest building has Ship's name on it now, and Ship was a startup in Birmingham. Yeah. So it's crazy to think about that, and a lot of them are going remote. I think Ship has maybe, I think they said like 25% capacity in them. Wow. In their building now, but it's sad to see that a lot of those businesses brick and mortars. Right. I mean, obviously, it's been Amazon has been killing stuff for however long now. But anyway,
Hi.
A visitor.
I know. It's Evie James.
Hey, Evie.
Hey. Say hi to Uncle Nicholas.
I saw a video of you with the Easter Bunny.
That's right. Hello. She's like, who is this?
I have no idea who you are.
Phone. Yes, it's a phone, baby.
Come on, baby, we're going to be in the tub-tubs.
Oh, apparently you have tub-tub time.
She raced back here faster than I could.
Bye-bye, Evie.
Bye-bye.
Come on, let's go get a tub-tubs.
Puppy? Yeah, get the puppy. Oh. Oh, yeah. What? Oh, yeah.
I need you to push it.
Oh. Oh, yeah. I got it. So that was our special guest visitor.
Surprised my dogs haven't made more visits. He was up here for a second. I saw him. Yeah, I got a chair next to me.
Which one was that?
The one that was standing up next to me, who's kind of hanging out right now, is Knox.
Oh, Noxie. Yeah.
Yeah, he's my half Australian Shepherd, half Golden Retriever.
I didn't realize Knox was that big.
Yeah,
because he was a puppy when y'all got him, right?
Yeah, we've had him since he was a puppy. So he's like 65 pounds now.
Ooh, boy.
And then Bo, our golden retriever that we rehomed, is 72. So
wow.
Yeah.
Now, which one was first, Knox or Bo?
Knox
I remember Knox first.
Knox is the first one. Yeah, we've had him since like COVID started, like March 2020. Wow. I think at this point. Yeah. So we've had him for a minute, and then we got Bo September of last year, but he was already like a year old when we got him. So he's Bo is very loving. Love Bo. He's a good addition. Knox is definitely my more trained one at this point. But Bo is going through training currently. So
that's good.
We'll see if he can still pick up on it. I know after a year it starts getting tough, but hopefully he can grasp it.
Yeah.
So.
But talking about commercial real estate in general, that's why I think about, from my perspective, that those commercial real estate owners, hopefully they've had their vacancy reserve, their maintenance expense reserve, a lot of these things that at the time that they weren't thinking about it, hopefully they had it in place. Some of your more seasoned commercial real estate owners, that's not a liability on their books. So they could, when they did the moratorium on rent, that probably didn't affect them. But, back to your point with restaurants, having to have the mandates and the restrictions and stuff. Now you look on the flip side of them as the tenant, if they were leveraged and they had debt, that would have been some of those long-lasting restaurants probably didn't know how to survive.
Yeah.
And so both the newer and the older, unless they're like a bigger chain restaurant, like a franchise chain, those probably, that's why it hurt to see so many restaurants close. And David Chang, I think he was a huge advocate for having some type of form of lobbying for restaurants, for the restaurant industry, and because it just got exposed how hard it was owning a restaurant. Now, would I ever own a restaurant? No. Will I eat at a restaurant? Oh, yes. I will eat at a restaurant all day long. It's like, I remember when it was only $10. Now it's $30, but the food still tastes just as good. All right, come on.
Yeah. Oh, it does. It does. It's interesting to see. I don't know if you ever went to Brookwood Mall in Birmingham.
Is that the one that's kind of like an outdoor mall? It's like
it's like outdoor, but then you could have gone inside, and there was an elevator that led up to the food court, and then there's a second floor that had jewelers,
and it had that little restaurant that's like way off in the distance of that whole area. It's kind of like a circular type restaurant.
Yep, circular building. Yep.
Yeah.
That's the place.
Okay. Yeah.
So all of that shut down during COVID.
Wow.
A lot of the restaurants. So if you remember, there's the street that's off the way, and then you essentially could either choose to go into the actual mall and park, or there's the strip of restaurants that are on the opposite side, kind of front of the mall. Okay, so a lot of those restaurants, unfortunately, I think have closed at this point. I don't know if any are open. I'm sure there are some, but I think pretty much everything inside of the mall is closed. But what they're doing that's interesting, and I wonder if we're going to see this more, is at least, let me say, I saw the plans for this were approved like 7 months ago, and you know how it is with retail stuff. Sometimes it just loses funding, or they find something that they can't move forward with or whatever. So anyway, the plan looked like it seemed to be they were essentially going to renovate half of the mall or more and turn it into apartments, condos, whatever. And then the rest of the space they were going to turn into dining, shopping, etc. for the people who live there to have close proximity to that. So I wonder if that's going to be more of the route that people go.
Probably they're going to kind of repurpose the real estate. And if you think about it from just a numbers standpoint, it makes sense because populations aren't going down, they're going up. So you're going to have to give some people places to stay. And so you're going to see, like, as far as multifamily, that type of real estate, that's probably going to keep having a overall appreciation and value simply because when it comes to rent, even with rent controls, it's going to go up. And saw an interesting clip from a 60 Minutes episode where they were talking about basically how much the rental real estate market for just houses is really just exploding simply because people can't really afford to get a mortgage. So they're instead, renting a 1 to 4 family, single family residence. But even then, those rents are going up too, because, being in a capitalistic society, people are taking advantage of it, which at some point, if it keeps going the way it's going, I feel like eventually that the government will have to kind of step in. And I'm not too keen on government overreach on the certain things, but nonetheless, there's no sense in price gouging people when it comes to rents. But I also don't feel like it's appropriate for them to mandate you can't charge this amount in rent, because at what level do you decide, like, well, if you make this much in revenue, okay, well, what's going to stop you from taking it down to, well, if you make less than that, then less than that, and less than that. You see where's the balance of, having a little bit of government oversight versus government over control. So
yeah,
it's going to be interesting.
It is. I mean, what you're describing right now with rent is a lot of what's happening at car dealerships. I don't know if you pay attention to what's happening, but car dealerships during COVID, obviously sales were down tremendously, especially when everybody was kind of in isolation and whatnot. But since then, what they did in turn is the dealerships actually started putting massive markups on cars. And even though production has gotten better, they are still charging massive markups, and their profits are essentially higher than ever at the dealership level. So the price gouging there, I don't know. Is it going to be government oversight? Is it going to be? I know that I can't remember which manufacturer it was. I think it might have been Ford, but essentially saying that we're going to start cutting ties with dealerships if they, are, putting down massive. Because one of the things they're having issues with right now is the new Ford Bronco. They're essentially taking advantage of the fact that the car is in such high demand that the MSRP, I think, on most Broncos is like 40 to 50,000. You'd be hard pressed to find one on the lot for less than 70.
Really?
Yep, because of dealer markups.
Wow, that's insane.
And
people are still trying to buy that.
Oh yeah. I know people. Well, that's why they keep getting away with it, right? It's because they put the markup and then somebody's like, I need something today. And they come on the lot and it's $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 more. And they just buy it because what other option do they have? Or if they just, aren't financially sound.
Even then, the used car market is expensive too, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah. So pre-COVID, I think I had my car assessed, and at this point, it would have been like 2 years older at that point, right?
Yeah.
My car was worth like $15,000.
Really?
Through COVID, my car has gained like $1,000 on its appraisal. That's like $15,000.
That's not like every, we all know that cars depreciate in value the second they go off the lot, but the inventory is so low and the demand so high that if I keep telling Jill all the time, when push comes to shove, just sell the car and we'll just drive around in the SUV and we'll just have one vehicle. She's like, no, don't do that. I'm like, all right. I just want to get out of this last little car loan debt. That's all I want to do. It's like, okay, let's just focus on it and let's just do that. I'm like, okay, all right, fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the market for a new car, and I was actually going to go like because the old adage of like, especially when you're 16 or whatnot, you always want like a BMW or an Audi, and people are like, oh no, don't do that because of the repair costs and whatever. But I mean, I genuinely, when I first started looking, I wanted a 2 or 3 year old, German car.
Yeah, German cars are tough.
Yeah, well, they're tough and they have reliability issues, but I don't need a reliable car anymore. I mean, I know that sounds bad, but I need something that I can get in and I can, if I want to take somebody to lunch, I can, as I'm becoming a manager, or if I just want to go have fun on the weekend, I can do that. So I don't really need something that is going to get me to point A to point B all the time. I just need something that it can be, you know, a hobby, have fun with, do whatever I want with it type car. But the whole thing about BMWs and Audis is they always depreciate within 3 to 4 years for 50% pre-COVID.
Wow.
It's not the case anymore.
Really?
I mean, you have these BMWs who, I mean, like the M3 market, which is one of their like top of line, like sports market cars. You still have to pay 70, 80,000 for a 4-year-old model. And they MSRP at 90 with, you know, the same package essentially. So
nope, hard pass.
we just bought Kylie a Hyundai Palisade. It was a 2020. It's very nice. It maybe has like 20,000 miles on it.
That's the bigger end SUV, right? That's similar to like a Ford Explorer or a Chevy Tahoe, right?
Yeah, so it's the same. It's the same body as the Kia Telluride, just the high-end version. Because obviously they're South Koreans, they swap chassis. But so we bought hers at 45. MSRP on a brand new one is like 54 or 52. So I mean, they're depreciating for near nothing.
Yeah, I knew we should have went ahead and got that Edge way back. Jill, we had to do some type of work on the Ford Escape. So it's not an old car; it's a 2019 model. So we got it in 2020, so you're old. But she had to do some work on it, so we started riding the Ford Edge, and she's like, "Oh, I like that a lot better." And I'm thinking, you know, down the line about, you know, a growing family, a little bit more space and all that, and it's like, we should probably go ahead. I know we don't want to get into any more debt, but maybe we just trade it in and see how much more we can knock off, and then just attack that, because we paid off the Escape in 2021. So this year we're going to shoot and paying off the Elantra. So, but I mean, Bob and Arlene, they just got a GMC Acadia. I think it was a GMC Acadia. It's a bigger size. And it's got all the bells and whistles and all that stuff. And it's like, isn't this great? I'm like, oh, no. All right. I know we're going to eventually need a new car. Let's hold out. And I told Jill the other day, it's like, if we're going to get a newer car, let's get brand new, you know, first year it comes out, whatever. And then hopefully by the time we do that, the prices will kind of reshift it, I hope. But, you know, if you think about gas prices, I remember pre-2001, pre-9/11 2001, you could get gas at less than $1 in Alabama. Now, I mean, it never really reset, you know. And so I'm just wondering if it's not gonna. Well, I mean, I don't know. With electric cars, electric vehicles coming out too, maybe it will drive prices down. Maybe. I don't know. It's so weird. I can't imagine paying like the amount that people do for electric vehicles too, because it's just, what happens if you can't get to a charging station in time? I don't.
Yeah, and that was, we actually had a really interesting conversation in one of my IS classes. I took my senior year at, I think it was my systems analysis class. I took my senior year at UAB. We had my professor at the time was absolutely massive on Tesla. I mean, just a huge, and this was like this would have been like 2018, you know, so it was like the Tesla hype was like kind of just really getting to go. Oh yeah. So he was huge. He had he had a Model S. He was massive on it. So we had a lot of conversations about like self-driving and the future of infrastructure and whatnot. And we had a really good conversation one day about, and I've seen some things that kind of back this up as potentially being the future. I mean, obviously the whole idea of ownership, we had the conversation about rent already. The whole idea of ownership is that going to become a thing of the past. And if it does, I mean, could it potentially leak into, I mean, even like with less people commuting to downtown areas to work?
Right.
And is it going to get to a point where, okay, like 50% of these downtown areas are dominated by parking spaces?
Right.
Is it going to get to a point where we just tear down those parking spaces inside of the actual city limits to create residential living? And then you don't even own a car. I mean, you essentially just Uber you hop in an automated vehicle, automated Uber, you go to the front door of your office, you go inside.
Like you've seen in sci-fi movies, basically.
Yeah. And then the car just goes and parks 30 minutes away in an area that's, desolate and isn't really as populated.
And then from the work side of it, you're sitting there, you're not driving, you're not doing anything. So you're sitting there working on work emails or whatever while you're in commute to the actual office itself. Yeah. That I could see that happening. But, my question is what about the power grid? What do we have the things in place and then the technology to keep these things in place? Like, you can't just make the massive switch over to electric. You've got to, what's going to create those things that creates the electricity? You have to maintain them, keep the existing technologies, and build the new technologies alongside it. Because again, it goes back to infrastructure and power grid. Because if you don't have those things in place, then, you're SOL. The other side of that too is, what do we have in place to defend against the power grids being attacked? Because if you knock out a power grid, I mean, just like what happened in Texas years ago, you've got people that don't know how to build a fire, don't know how to cook food, that don't know how to keep themselves warm, very basic things that we didn't have to know about back then during times of the Wild Wild West or colonial period times. Again, I think what would benefit the world, or at least the U.S., is having structures in place that protect the infrastructure, backup plans if the infrastructure and the power grids get knocked out, and another side of it, just a commitment towards those simple things like way back when, such as home economics, like how you cook a meal, how do you build a fire. Some of those things that were taught in schools just aren't taught in schools anymore, but those things should be taught in schools, simply because what happens if your microwave doesn't work? What happens if your gas stove doesn't turn on? Do you know how to use a regular can opener, hand crank can opener?
Oh my God, I showed my wife, she's always owned, even from when she was born, her parents have always owned an automatic can opener.
Yeah.
And she showed it to me and I was like, are you serious? Because I'd never seen that.
Right.
And
I'd never
I
used
was like, do you really need an automatic can opener? She's like, this is all I've ever used. And I handed her a manual can opener. I said, just use this.
Try this.
Because it wasn't working or something.
Right.
It shorted or something. So I was like, just use this. She was like, I literally do not know how to use this can opener. I was like, that is absolutely insane to me.
Yeah.
I was like, that is crazy.
And on the flip side, it took me forever to figure out how to get the lid latched up and put underneath and magnetically seal and then push down on it. It took me forever to do that. And I'm like, just give it the hand crank. I'll use that stupid.
Yeah. And you know what the sad part is the automatic one is set up right next to my whole coffee setup. And it's the main thing we use. I don't even know where the hand crank one is. So I'm like, of course she won on that too. So it's like,
yeah.
But yeah, no, you're right. It's absolutely insane. Just the basic skills that my generation. I'm technically, this is crazy to think about. I'm technically the first year, I think, of Gen Z, the first or second year of Gen Z.
Wow.
I know we get classified a lot with millennials, but I'm technically a Gen Z, so I'm essentially like the last line before you just have a smartphone in your hand before when you're born type deal. So it's
I've always found it curious about the classifications of the different generations, like the greatest generation, the baby boomer generation, Gen X, millennial, Gen Z. I wonder who came up with that and what makes them fall within that category, besides just the age brackets. But somebody had to have sat there and said, okay, these are massive shifts in behaviors and things like that. So this is why we were going to classify this as this particular generation. I think that's fascinating because I can't remember when I started hearing that thrown around, but that whole Gen Z, Gen X, millennial, all that stuff. And I was like, at the time I was like, okay, whatever that means. Now as I get older, I'm like, well, who came up with that idea? It's pretty cool and everything, but it's different. But there's things out there in this world that completely boggle my mind. But for you've had a interesting journey from college to where you are now. So you were studying business to get done, and then you were working in the insurance industry. So is that kind of what you're still doing now in some form or fashion?
Yeah. So I had, swapped over when I got to UAB. I had first looked at maybe going back. I talked to a counselor about, how long would it take me to get back on the biomedical path? And they were like, yeah, you'll graduate. And I think I would have been graduating this year if I went on the biomedical path. So and then for reference, I graduated like 2 years ago. So
okay.
I had just met Kylie, I think at the time. I think that was right around the time that I talked to that counselor. So I was already kind of thinking about the future of like, okay, realistically, at that time, she was going to go be an optometrist. So she's going to have optometry school. So that's 4 more years of school, even after she finished her biomed undergrad.
Yeah.
So at that time, I'm like, she's in school for 6 more years. If I swap, I'm in school for, 4 more or something, 3 more. I just feasibly, it cannot be done. And I had a very overblown idea of what, you needed for computer science. So I didn't go down that route out of sort of fear. And then that's what led me to IS, because it was a blend of like, you learn about programming, but more from like a business level, not from like a theoretical level. And I just really enjoyed IS, and it led me to a point where I, for some reason, ended up taking an internship with a company called C.H. Robinson, because they were talking about using, essentially they were telling me that for part of the job, I was going to be working with like logistically based like transportation systems and doing system analysis. Well, it ended up being a sales internship, essentially. They kind of worked me into doing a sales internship and then an account management internship.
Yeah.
So I started off, they were like, well, you've got to do each aspect of the business. Yeah. So I started off cold calling about trucking servicing. And then and it led into the account management portion, and they offered me a job. And at first, when you get offered your first job out of college, especially with my generation, I don't know how the job market was when you graduated, but I mean, you're still hearing about kids who graduate and never find a job. So it's like, am I really going to turn this down and risk not having a job? When I graduate?
Yeah.
So
now at that point in time, you were dating Kylie, right?
Yep, we were dating.
So you're thinking, okay, so this goes further, I want this to be a long-term relationship. I need to be able to provide. I think that was a feeling that you were having at that point in time?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Especially if, sales is, to my generation, at least, I'm sure it's a model that people are used to at this point, but sales is terrifying.
Sales is always terrifying.
Oh yeah. Especially when being back then, I couldn't, sell you water if you were drowning. Whatever you want to talk about. Whatever adage you want to use there. But so that was not good. So thankfully I made the decision. Okay, I've still got, I think I had 2 more semesters at that point. I was like, I'm going to do another internship. I actually ended up doing 2 more internships. One of them was with the company I work with now, Highland Capital. But I loved Highland Capital at the start. I got an IT internship there. And I absolutely loved it. I wanted to stay, but the IT team was like 8 people, and they had just hired on 4 people while I was an intern. So they were like, we don't have room, unfortunately. Yeah. So I was like, okay. So that's when I went the protective life route. And they essentially kind of fit me into protective life obviously is massive. They have a whole internship program where they bring in like 20 interns from all different walks of college, and they essentially place you with a unit who got approved, and they think you're going to be a good fit for them. Right. So I got placed with the business automation unit. And that's how I learned about RPA. And
what's that RPA?
Robotic process automation.
What is that?
Robotic process automation is essentially it's a form of software that it allows you in a like low code or no code environment to build out automated workflows. So like, for example, like we have a bot. They're just called bots. Things that do automated are called bots generally. So we have a bot that like reads an email inbox, and anytime it sees like an e-app notification come through, it goes ahead and grabs that e-app. And what I built it to do is it'll go ahead and read the insured's name, and it'll actually go into our system that we use internally. It'll search up the person's name, and then it'll go ahead and grab the status on the case, and it'll assign that status to that email and then forward it off to where it needs to go based on that status.
And so you don't have, so is there like proprietary software that's used by that, or you actually have to, okay. So somebody's already built the software that does that, right?
Yep, somebody's already built the software that does that. Like screen scraping and all that has been a thing for a long time. I think Excel macros on steroids. It is essentially Excel macros that you can use with anything, like anything on your computer, you can make a macro for it. So
cool.
That's kind of what RPA is. Funny enough, it's grown a lot since 2017. The company we use is called Automation Anywhere. There's companies like UiPath, Blue Prism, but now they had an offering. So Microsoft had an offering called Microsoft Flows. They called them Flows. And then I think around a year and a half ago, they rebranded it and pivoted to fitting it into the Power Platform. So like Power BI and whatnot. And they call it Power Automate. So RPA has gotten so big that now essentially Power Automate, I think, is included in like base level business licenses for Office 365.
That's cool. That's really neat.
Yeah.
Because if you think about how that impacts things, okay. So what that means is if you go back to the old days, you would have to send in your application. You'd have to have a workforce of 20, maybe 30, 40, looking through the application, looking through what's in paper file. And, the time that it takes to actually work something is now, it drastically reduces it, which means, you don't need those 20, 40, 50 people. So, I'm thinking about it from the standpoint of like banking institutions. Once they really get a grasp on blockchain technology and automation, then, you really don't need half the staff that you have. I mean, you can cut it down even more. Yeah. That's scary stuff.
And that's why personally I left Protective. I loved the company. I think unfortunately RPA as a technology got pitched just from the get-go. I don't know who was responsible for it. I'm not putting blame on anyone. But the message that when RPA got talked about and the automation portion of it got talked about, seems like the upper management took it as this is a software we can use to cut costs and reduce staffing. At its core, it's not what it does. It's not able to replace a human entirely.
No,
and
of course not.
That's something I'm very passionate about, and that's why I actually left the team at Protective to come back to Highland. I actually took a step down in my role. I was back in an analyst position, working with our institutional team. So we have a channel dedicated to just working with wires and banks and whatnot. So I was an analyst for that team. And then essentially I pitched RPA to our executive management committee. And then from there, they were like, this is awesome. Let's kind of, get you in the right seat and get this started. So it's taken essentially a year and a half at this point to kind of get a team fully going. But we have now a dedicated, me and one other person are consultants for RPA, for automation in general. And we're sitting on a team of, it's our business process improvement team. So we have a BPI team, and then we have a customer experience team, and we're kind of merged together. And then within that, RPA is a technology we use, and we kind of have me dedicated to it and a colleague. And then as of this summer, I will be getting one more direct report, and then I'm hiring an intern. So
that's how it's come full circle. That's how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, that's how I got to where I was now. I literally, I pitched an idea to executive management, and I kind of came from the, people are so scared of like ideas dying on the vine. And I think that's one of the big problems with a lot of organizations is they don't take into account feedback that their employees have. But their employees are the ones who are in the business every day. Yeah, not every idea is going to be great, but you need to give them an outlet in order to feel like they gave their message to the highest level.
Yep.
You know, they
at least
got
that
what
at,
they
at a
wanted to
minimum,
say.
even if it's a no-go, at least that. Yeah, I think
At least give me a chance.
Yeah, well, if you look at the most fundamental level, being a family, okay, you want to feel like your communication is valued. Whether or not the other person is going to do what you want, that's different. However, you want to be able to feel like you can communicate openly and honestly with that person. Because if you can't, then what's the point of being in a relationship? You know? And so from a business standpoint, that's how a business should run. You should be able to have a open door policy. It's a phrase that's overused, but in essence, places and forums where people, Ray Dalio, who owns Bridgewater, he has implemented that type of policy where anybody within any chain can talk about, senior level or any ideas and things like that. Because ultimately, the heart of a business, of a family, is to keep growing, to keep, growing in every walks of life. And so people are going to their everyday jobs. You got to go to a place where you feel valued and able to communicate. Because if not, then as long as you're living in the U.S., go find somewhere else where you can find that. Don't sit there and suffer. Go find something that you can go do that at, especially if it's a field that it's a easily hireable job field. Don't stay in something that you're not going to be valued. Go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what you're talking to, I just went through last week. So I'm going through a 9-week program. It's a management training course through a company called Lead Belay. So Lead Belay, I think it's the week 3 of that course. We just finished the material for it, but essentially we kind of, in order to, it comes down to safety, communication, and alignment is how you function. And without safety, nothing else can happen, because a person has to feel safe that they're going to, A, have their job, B, that they have a path of growth, and that C, that their voice is going to be heard before they can align with anything and before they will actively communicate with you. So it's kind of like building through those steps of getting your team to have a morale that's strong enough to get past okay, I feel safe here. Now we can, align with the ultimate goal of getting to where we need to go to. So,
okay, so I got to interrupt you because you know this about me, and if you don't know this about me, now you know this about me. I love anime. I love anime.
Oh yeah,
I seriously love anime. So prior to us, doing this episode, I was watching the 2nd season of The Rise of the Shield Hero. Shout out to Crunchyroll. I love that little streaming thing. But the whole essence of that, what you're just talking about, safety, I think about as in the context of this anime, because basically the shield hero is like an anti-hero. He's, he thought when he got transported to this world that it would go one way. He got betrayed. So he had to basically fight his way to the point where he is now, where he's actually been awarded lordship over a town. So in this episode, season 2, episode 1, he is like, all the pre-chosen heroes have met together, and there's a threat that's coming to the kingdom. And there's this overarching arc that the other heroes are like, well, this is not related to that. We're not going to prevent this threat that's coming. Whereas the shield hero is like, no, I need to protect my town. I need to protect my friends, my people, whatever it is. I know you asked all of them to come, but you were really asking me to come because you wanted to see if I was going to help. And of course I'm going to help. So it's a very short breakdown of like that whole series. So it's well worth watching because he's such a anti-hero. And but again, safety, it's an interesting thing for that, because like a core of humanity, that's what we care about most, is safety. Because if you think about your tribe or your family, that's what you're trying to protect. You're trying to make sure that they have food on the table, that they have, the four walls of like food, shelter, transportation, and clothing, you want to have those things. Well, if you can have that in the workplace, then of course you're going to get people on board all day long. It comes down to safety. I mean, difference between men and women. Women, for the most part, I would say it's not 100%, but they care about safety and the finances and the shelter that they were able to provide to the home. Guys, they care about safety in a different way, in that they're trying to create safety by going out and, conquering their environment as needed. And so it's the same type of safety. It's just a different side of that coin. And, that's really good. That course is really good in order to build your organization. Yeah, I would say number one, safety. The order is important. Safety is a huge thing. That's how you get everybody to buy in to whatever your ideology is, whatever your vision is.
Safety is the foundation of, whether you want to go the route of our, ancestors in terms of like way back, if depending on your outlook on faith, of course, needing, a cave to live in and fire to stay warm. Yeah, that's fine. Or if you want to go the path of faith, it's, your guarantee in eternal life. It's at the base of everything. You have to start with safety. Yeah. And it's crazy to think about. It's, as a fundamental need for humans, it extends past having a roof over your head and food in your belly. Yeah. It extends into like your development as a person, and whatever you want to do, you have to feel safe or you're not going to be able to progress.
Yeah, it's I think it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think in essence, I can't remember them all, but I think if safety isn't at the core foundation, it should be, because even think about the word salvation, safety, because you got saved. Where are you now? You're safe because you got saved. So, I never really say that's why I love these conversations, because I think about things I never thought about before. You just take it. Yeah.
It's because like you hear, like you're in school and you're taking whatever class it is, and you hear about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, but you think of like, you think of having safety as like your first pillar of your hierarchy of needs, is that's what I need to in order to survive. But you also need safety in order to thrive as well.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes you time to realize that, and development and growth. And it's a very cool concept.
I think I need to write that one down in the book. You need safety not just to survive, but just to thrive as well. That's huge. Is that a Nick Miliano original?
That is an original. That right.
Okay, that's I'm gonna make sure that when I put that in the book, I'll put your name next to it. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, man. Credit me, I'd appreciate it. But
absolutely.
You gotta do.
Yeah. And even then, it's on this episode, so it's credit right now.
Oh, that's true. You can just point right back to it, right in the annotation.
Like, right here. By the way, I said this, and I'm like, no, you didn't. Go to minute marker here, this episode, this timestamp. Like, oh, yeah, you did. All right, I'm getting old. I'm sorry.
But it's in I think tying this back to my work, that's why I'm enjoying my work so much more now. It's because I've built from the get-go on the messaging to, for our middle managers, our upper management, our executives, our the employees that are doing the day-to-day data entry that's going to get automated. I've told them, I'm like, this is safe, and ultimately it's going to be the best thing for you. So like for when we go to these units, obviously they hear automation and it just scares the crap out of them.
Yeah,
and it
absolutely.
Should.
Yeah.
It should, because like there's a lot of things about our society that need to change before we get to the point where we're going, which I don't think a lot of people know where we're going, but it's going to scare some people. But I think that ultimately, if I can have a little bit of an impact in my life with what I do for my work, I want people to know, hey, upper management wants me to go into a team and they want me to find the most value in the quickest possible time, as cheap as I can do it, right? But my only caveat to that is the first thing I have to do, the first thing I want to do before I do that is I'm going to have a conversation with these people that are doing this work every day. And I'm going to ask them, what is the thing that you hate doing the most every day?
Yes,
and can I help you get rid of that task?
and if it involves actual data entry itself, there's human error in data entry, any type of data entry. All it takes is like, you're supposed to put like a 13-digit character, 13 different, character long thing, and it's got to match exactly, but you just hit one keystroke off and it throws it to somebody else. Just but that's a really good way to present it. To me, that's great, because that's what people don't think about is, but basically what we're doing is we're not eliminating your job. We're making your job more efficient for you, easier for you, but both top, middle, and bottom, and just helping them understand, like, I understand what you're scared of, but even with, let's say in the trucking industry, they're talking about automating the trucking system. Mm-hmm. Well, you can't completely 100% do all of it, because you're going to still need human intervention at some point. Everything that we build has to have at its backup level, some type of human intervention kill switch, to be able to override it. It has to.
It has to. And that's why, I go into these teams and I obviously I try to explain this to them. And the reason I don't start off with the big disruptive, most valuable thing we could do is because as soon as you take away that burden from them, and you instantly build that trust, and they see, okay, when I literally on the last meeting where I went to management, they were like, okay, what value have you provided? And of course they're looking for numbers, they're looking for ROI. Yeah. The first thing I told them, I was like, hey, Kevin over in accounting, who, essentially his entire brain is the roadmap of the entire business. He has every business process in his brain, and we're trying to get it out in writing. I was like, him? Yeah. I was like, he just got to take a vacation for the first time in 2 years. Yeah. Because of RPA, because of the automation that we're doing. Yeah. Yeah. It's not about trying to get these people fired. It's trying to get people to where they can live their life and have a real balance. Because
that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially post-COVID. Staff is so lean across a lot of companies. People are overworked.
Yeah.
And getting people to a point where they can take a vacation is
they need it. We're humans.
We're humans. You have to you have to stop at some point.
I don't care if you use CRISPR or whatever new biotechnology that's going to augment humanity. At the end of the day, we all have a shelf life, and we're meant to have a shelf life. That we're not robots. There is a difference between a human being and a robot, and we should have rest. There's something that's built into humanity where it says, hey, you need to take a break, you need to rest. And I find kind of repivoting back into an anime, Dragon Ball Z.
I have a little more.
And Gohan are training in the hyperbolic time chamber, preparing for Cell's arrival, and they're going hard and heavy, training. And even in a anime manga episode, Goku's like, son, we need to rest. And they just rest. Yeah. See, it's inherent. It's something inherent inside of humanity. It's built inside of us that rest is necessary, but also too, rest is good. On the seventh day, the Lord rested. So there's something that happens on the other side of rest. So, again, with mental health and things like that, well, what do you need to do? You need to rest. So that's, these guys that have been working lean for all this time, they need to take a break. The other side of that too, he's got a lot of processes inside his mind that have probably never been put on paper. So if anything happens to him, SOL. So
that's what I told him. And that's, we have somebody who is dedicated to working with him to getting these on paper, because they had been done previously, but it was, oh my God, you don't want to see that PDF. That was like 50 pages long. It was just like a train wreck happening the whole way down. It literally like a spaghetti. Just across the page. But we have somebody who's trying to work with him. And if he's overworked and burnt out and his morale is low, he's just going to leave. He's just going to quit. He is going to quit. And then everything that's in his brain is going to go with
It's going with
Yeah. So you need to make this person happy. It's not, whatever you do, make that guy happy. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, I ran into this scenario. I do a lot at my job. Well, I ran into a scenario where a person left. And so I was like the backup to that process. So, I didn't quite understand how to do it. So I privately reached out to that person after they had left, and there's like, I'm not there anymore. You're gonna have to figure it out. And so I'm like, well, I thought we had a good rapport that you were, but all right then. And but that's what happens. And I understand you get into the grind and you're in the day-to-day and the job, but every business, especially businesses that run very, very low efficiency ratios, you better have something in place, because somebody's going to get sick, they're going to quit, they're going to get fired, or they're going to retire. So are you prepared?
To add to that list you had, very, very unfortunate situation.
Or die.
Yeah. So we are going through an acquisition. We're acquiring a company. I don't think it's public, so I won't say it. But anyway, so their accounting processes, the main person who was involved with it, he was set to have a meeting with our accounting team. One of them being my colleague, because he's kind of, we do RPA, but like I said, we're part of VPI. So, we're taking care of documenting business processes and then merging them into our own. He quite literally got hit by a car.
Jesus.
And passed away. Like 3 days before they were supposed to meet. So this past month has been a fire drill for everybody on that team. Not only is like everybody, especially the people who knew him, absolutely heartbroken and just taking vacation as they should and mourning as they should. Mm-hmm. There is also, from our side, we have a timeline that we have to get this acquisition done, and he had 90% of what we needed in his brain.
Yeah. Wow. Again, it goes to show how important it is to get the wetware that's upstairs and put it on paper. And then, even if it can't be translated, once it's on paper, then translate it, automate it. Yeah, that's huge, because again, everybody's made differently, built differently, and everybody has their own gifts. That's how I look at it. People probably don't agree with me on that, but I yet to see an exact copy of myself. Everybody is unique. And so, the sooner you can take it. And again, this is why we live in the greatest age ever, because if I were to put everything that I know and do on paper, it would probably fill up this room. Whereas now you can put it on the internet, in the cloud. You used to use external hard drives or a hard drive on the actual physical computer. You can actually put it in the cloud now. I mean, I am a hoarder by nature. I hoard like a crazy person. So if Jill saw how much information I actually have, she'd be like, we can't. It's going to be saved somewhere, stored somewhere. So that's what's going to happen. I mean, you should see, I threw away like 3/4 of my book collection, 90%, well, not 90, well, probably 90% of my comic book collection. It's not, I don't have it anymore. So, like I'm saying, I hoard. I know I hoard. I had hundreds of VHS tapes with how much of like shows and movies and all that stuff that I used to watch, all gone. So, but now you can still have, like, if you have it in the right way, you can still store all that stuff. That's why I love this, because this is stuff that, years from now, Evie's great grandchild can come back and watch an episode and think how crazy their ancestor was.
Yeah, exactly. And there's like stuff, and it's unfortunately, this was like right before the time period of the internet and everything being digital. When I was like, if Dad watches this, he'll remind me. But I think I was like 2 years old. Anyway, when my mom and my dad were still married, that we had our house burned down. They lost everything in their house. Like, I haven't seen pictures of some of the things they had in there, of weddings, of family, of events, of I mean, me as a child, even a lot of my baby, like really, really small baby pictures burned. So it's crazy to think about the fact that there's a lot of memories I have quite literally never seen, because they were taken from our family in that way. Whereas our whole wedding is on YouTube. Like our whole wedding, our rehearsals, everything, and it's backed up as well in case anything ever happens. YouTube, obviously, but it's like nothing, as far as I know, can take that away unless the internet quite literally dies.
It dies.
Like
And this is a massive, major catastrophic event. But the way everything is getting so digitized now, like for example, I was helping somebody who had stored some crypto on a hard wallet, hard wallet, Nano Ledger, and I hadn't touched it in like 2 or 3 years. So I had to reteach myself how to actually hook it in. And since then, the software had been software updates, all that stuff. And so I was like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, so this is really putting this stuff to the test, because I had to get his recovery phrase, keyed it in, and hooked it up. It's like, okay, well, it's probably on this one. No, it's not on that one. It was on the other one. Powered it up, keyed in the recovery phase, had the software on the desktop. Next thing I know, boom, it's still there. Everything, all that he had bought, all that Bitcoin, whatever. So, it's amazing that the technology, I feel like even if something catastrophic were to happen in that sense, if we keep progressing the way we're progressing, that there will be a backup to it because the internet itself will still have a backup to itself. So I don't know. I think about like stuff like Ghost in the Shell and all these like really cool futuristic shows, and like we're like humanity is pushing itself to that place. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I mean, you have the forethought of where you're going to go, right? So it's kind of like even subconsciously, we're going in a direction, and I'm glad that stuff is getting better, because I remember, I mean, obviously we all got, me, you, my dad, we all got into crypto early compared to a lot of people who are in it now, right? Like the wild west of it, essentially, which has kind of burned me on it in a lot of ways. But I remember he had gotten, I don't know if it was a hard wallet or if it was on his computer, but it required a passcode.
Yeah.
I think he had lost that passcode and never can get back into that wallet.
Yeah.
Which had, I didn't want to think about how much money on it at this point.
And that's why I've always teach everybody that's new on this, hey, that recovery phrase is key. Have it on a Word document, have it on a piece of paper, put it on a safe, I don't care where you put it, but have at least multiple backups for that recovery phrase. Because that is the key thing in accessing the wallet itself. And then you had to worry about all the different players and stuff. There was one guy, he got involved with something that was called Hexabot. And basically what it was is you send it Bitcoin, it would just basically have a yield on the Bitcoin. Well, it turns out that site basically just, it was a Ponzi scheme. It sucked it in and then eventually it shut down. And the industry is so new, there's no way to go after these guys. Now it's out there. The good thing about this technology, it is out there. But being able to trace it, that's where the next technology is coming, is how to be able to trace it, because it is there. It's that's what people think about crypto is. It's like, oh, well, you'll never be able to find them. It's like, no, if the government wants to find you, it can find you. It can find where that wallet is, and they may not have the phrase, but they probably have means to get that phrase from you.
And it depends on the government too, right? Because and this was like I said, this was pretty early with us, at least. I can't remember what year it was. It was probably 2016, 2017. I don't know if you remember, though. I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me. But there was actually like a crypto exchange where they were only IPOing certain coins on this website. So I remember we bought some coins on this website. I can't remember what it was. But the guy ended up essentially hacking the entire thing. It was essentially an entire scam. Wow. And the Italian government, I believe it was, took down the whole website, and they were starting an investigation, and they were going to resend the crypto back out, the coins back out to everybody. Never did. I don't think anything's ever come of it. It's been like 4 or 5 years. And
they're holding it somewhere. They're telling others probably got it on hold. Yeah. It's like that Mt. Gox thing. They're finally starting to try to get that money back to the people that got that lost their money from Mt. Gox. And like I said, as the governments get more and more involved, which they are, as these big businesses start adopting them more, which they are. I mean, this is classic business cycle stuff. I think we're still in early adoption phase, but once it hits like true mainstream, those people have, in my opinion, the way I look at it is, if you're getting into Bitcoin pre-100,000, you're still going to be making money. I know people are like, that's a little cheap. But what always drew me to the crypto was it was basically doing what I used to do a long time ago, which is buying fractional shares. Well, I used to do that with ING Direct. ING Direct used to allow you to buy fractional shares. So that's how I ended up owning like a couple shares of Netflix before Netflix ever went to the price it is now. That couple shares that I own, like I'm never going to sell it just because I love looking at the percentage gain over the lifetime. It's like it's down to a couple hundred. It's like, yeah, but you see that percentage gain on that thing? That thing's wonderful. Like that's my ego.
the big green number.
Right. That big. I'm gonna send it to you after the thing. But it's just that market never shuts down. It's open 24/7. Buy at any point in time. Yeah, as much as you want at any point in time. It is the future of where things are heading, and as it gets more and more in place. But just the fact that people are willing to accept it as a form of tender, during a conflict, a major conflict right now, or certain countries are accepting as a major tender, then it's happening. And now you don't need the Fed, you don't need banks, you don't need that's why a lot of countries are starting to do the central bank digital currencies, CBDCs type stuff. They're trying to get on board with this as quickly as possible. So it's going to be interesting. We're going to get to a place where there probably is going to be one currency, and that's it.
And it's unfortunate to see that a lot of people are instantly turned off or burned by thinking about crypto as a currency, which obviously I think the main use of it obviously is, but just the blockchain technology behind it is so instrumental to so many industries. I mean, like one of the main things I remember learning about years and years ago was how they essentially have like a truly authentic ledger on where all of these pieces are coming from. These arrows are being used for like planes or manufacturing companies. They essentially have a way to, with 100% accuracy, track where that part goes, and then it's absolutely authentic before they put it on a plane or a car or whatever they're going to do.
And then you factor in quantum computing and AI into this, and it's just going to get faster. It's just going to get so fast. And then there's going to be the potential for fraud is going to go to zero. It's going to go to zero. And on the banking side, that's huge, because I was explaining it to a coworker the other day. I was like, look, what you don't understand about the transactions with crypto is it's one way. It's always one way. Whereas with a ACH or a wire, well, if there's potential fraud, you can pull it back. Okay. Yeah. But the second that crypto goes and you've got an authentic address to somebody, and once it's get verified by all the nodes, that person has it and it's theirs. It's their legal tender to use as they see fit. And that's such a huge pivot that it's so hard for a financial institution to truly understand. You don't need the bank to be the ledger that verifies anymore.
Yeah. And the saddest thing is about where we're going, and we talked about this earlier in the conversation, is that the reality is that technology is moving so fast that infrastructure is going to be the chokehold for it.
Yeah.
I mean, infrastructure, power, I mean, even just thinking about the fact that I don't know if you've heard about it, but there's a plan to build essentially a bullet train across the I-20 corridor. So it would start in Atlanta, it would go through Birmingham, it would go through Mississippi. I'm not sure what city there. It would go through New Orleans, and then it would end up in, I think it's like Houston or Dallas.
Wow.
Anyway, so the big thought about that was, you can have people who now commute between Atlanta and Birmingham and could work in those cities with a 30-minute commute, essentially.
Wow.
And which is absolutely insane to think about. Yeah. But now with COVID, it's like, okay, are people even going to want to commute 30 minutes to work in Atlanta or Birmingham or New Orleans when they could just work remote? I mean, it's going to be, I would absolutely love it, because if I could get on a train and in 2 hours, hour and a half, be in New Orleans, hanging out on Bourbon Street or eating in the French Quarter, for dinner, and then head back home after a few drinks, like that's great.
And and that completely, if it's done right, that can completely eliminate, the whole drunk driving fatality stuff. You know,
Oh yeah,
completely changes that. But also too, you start thinking about that. Well, how does it? What's the implication as far as for tax revenues for the various states? How does that impact them? You know, because how do you track those transactions? So these are really cool civil engineering type concepts that they're gonna have to be addressed, and they're gonna have to start thinking about it.
Oh, they're gonna have to, and it's just funny to see that the U.S. was almost built on railways, but how Europe took that technology and just turned it into like a massive. I absolutely love. If I could live in Europe, I would. I don't think there's any feasible way for me to, but just for the train systems alone, it is such a game changer that we spent a month in a small town where Seacole's parents lived in Germany. It was called Spisch. It was 30 minutes outside of Cologne. I never once set foot in a car while we were there. We walked to the train station. We took a train over to Troisdorf, which was like it was like 20 minutes away. It was like a 10-minute train ride. We'd get lunch. We would hang out. If we wanted to go over to Siegburg, we'd hop on another train. We'd go over there. We'd get drinks. We'd watch, Bayern Munich play soccer or football. Sorry. And it's just you take a train everywhere. Obviously they have cars and they have roadways. Obviously they have the Autobahn. They have the coolest roadway in the world.
Yeah.
But still, you can take a train to anywhere, like from your house. You walk. It gets you healthy. I lost like 20 pounds while I was in Germany eating whatever I want because I walked all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I absolutely love that aspect of Europe. And if we could even get like a glimpse of that in the US, I think we're behind the times on a commuting aspect, but from a tourism aspect, would that not be phenomenal?
Yeah, I mean, it would boom. Tourism would go through the roof because people can now get to wherever they want to quicker, easier. And I think, Elon Musk must have been thinking something along those lines when he was with the Boring Company, he's not just thinking about from the aspect of obviously having 2, 3, 4 million people in one city at one point in time and how it clogs up the roadways. But it's amazing how just one simple thing, how it can impact many different levels of society itself. And I think that would be, I don't know, well, probably unions and greed and all that stuff. But, that's why it needs to go to that place eventually.
Yeah.
It just would make it a lot easier. Man.
The future is crazy and it's only getting crazier.
Yeah, that's what that in a nutshell. Oh, bro. I think yes, that's why I also like talking with people that are just so much more in the know about stuff than I do, because I always learn something new, and I've learned all kinds of stuff today, man. It was awesome.
Oh yeah, vice versa, especially on the anime portion.
Yeah, man.
You definitely had me beat on the anime. On the anime knowledge.
If y'all ever have a strange desire to watch anime, I tell you, there is a anime for absolutely everything. There is an anime for badminton, for swimming, for cycling, for basketball, for football.
I've heard the basketball one is very good. I've had the basketball one recommended to me. I can't remember the name of it.
Kuroko no Basket.
Yeah. Yep. I've had that recommended to me multiple times. So,
yep. Kuroko no Basket, Slam Dunk was another one. They've got fighting animes. They've got romance animes. They've got, really, I like Jill just, she probably just shakes her head whenever I talk about it. Like, did I tell you about this new anime I'm watching? She's like, I have to give credit to Sungi. I knew him from South Korea. He was the one that introduced me to anime because I've always loved cartoons. I'm a kid. I'm always going to be a kid at heart. But I remember going to his house in Cressy, Florida, and watching, I think it was called Project A-ko. And that's where I got first introduced to anime. And I was like, she's been dating me ever since. And then it wasn't until not recently, maybe 5-6 years ago. It's when another friend of mine, Jessica, she introduced me to Crunchyroll. And I was like, and that's when I started watching it. And so back then I always watched dubbed anime. I didn't watch like stuff with subtitles, and I was like, it has to be in English. I can't, but no, once I started finding something that I liked, I was just like, I don't care. I'll read the subtitles. Don't bother me.
Oh yeah, no.
It's a good way to learn Japanese too. So I'm like, Nami, Nam desu ka? Oni-chan?
Oh yeah, that was actually another really funny. Going back to my friend Seacole, he has a teammate who streams on Twitch. And this guy, I think he's 18 years old, and he lives in Canada, but he's Filipino by like ethnicity. And for some reason, I guess it's just the times that he streamed at or something, his entire fan base is Japanese.
Really?
So in turn, since he's like the largest figure on the team, he gets like upwards of 7,000-8,000 people that view his stream when he streams. He's one of the larger streamers. His entire chat, when you go in there,
nothing but Japanese characters.
Nothing but Japanese. And he's had to start learning Japanese
to communicate
with them. Yeah. I mean, obviously they know English pretty well, but he actually like wants to read it and stuff. But in turn, a lot of Cole's fans have been Japanese, and a lot of his team fans have been Japanese, and it's just like, it's cool how the world works nowadays.
Yeah.
Like you could just by chance, just because you stream at a time that's convenient and play video games on the internet for a time zone that is convenient for Japan.
Yeah.
And you become the biggest Japanese personality on your website.
That's awesome.
And you don't even know a lick of it. You don't know a lick of the language.
It's like Tom Segura, he's got a channel now where he does like his whole episode in Spanish. It's completely in Spanish. All his guests are in Spanish. He's speaking in Spanish, and it's like before the episode even starts, he just says, "Hey, if you want to follow on the episode and you don't speak Spanish, just hit the closed caption button." Okay, yeah. It's so and the whole episode's in Spanish. It's just so great. Cool. That's so great. Yeah. Huh. The way it just shows, as humans, we connect. It doesn't matter language barriers. We find something that's common core, common ground, we'll connect.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and that's even like, I've had people who do like Doctors Without Borders and, who do missionary work and go to like small villages in Africa where you would be like, obviously you don't even know their dialect because it's, down to a handful of people. Right. But they still find ways of like feeding each other and clothing each other, communicating and laughing together over just existing. So it's like at the core of humanity, that's really cool.
It's hope. There's always hope.
Yeah, there's always hope.
Well, bro, I need to have you back on again sometime. This is fun.
This was fun. It was a good conversation. I went down many different paths, but I think that was an awesome conversation. So I enjoyed talking to you, man.
Yeah, well,
Thank you for having me, of course.
Of course, going to have you back on. Hopefully Derek will be on, or any number of people on, and we'll just all just have a good time.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Okay, well, I appreciate the time. Thank you for having me on. I look forward to future conversations. And,
absolutely. I love you, bro. Tell your dad I said I love him.
I will do.
All right.
He loves you too, man. All right.
See ya.
Thank you.